Greetings. The moral issues concerning payment for vaccination. This is Victorino Raymundo Lualhati of the Philosophy Department, De La Salle University, Manila. The primary purpose of COVID-19 vaccination has always been to protect individuals from severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Being fully vaccinated will also help reduce the likelihood of new variants emerging. Living with COVID-19 without prohibitive restrictions in daily life demands public health approaches like wearing masks and social distancing, as well as vaccination of many more people globally. As of May 23, 2022, the World Health Organization reports that more than 11.8 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered. Almost 5.2 billion received at least one dose, and 4.7 billion persons are fully vaccinated. The World Health Organization reminds us that we must continue to support all countries to reach 70% vaccination coverage as soon as possible, including 100% of those aged over 60, 100% of health workers, and 100% of those with underlying conditions. In the Philippines, a total of 151.6 million doses have been administered, of which more than 70.8 million received a complete dose, but only 14 million received a booster dose. There are also reports that millions of vaccines have expired and 27 million doses more may soon expire. To increase vaccination uptake, we may need a plan B. We may need to resort to payment for vaccination. On May 5, 2021, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić announced a one-time payment of 3,000 dinars as a reward to citizens who have already received one dose of COVID-19 vaccines. In Hong Kong, vaccinated residents qualified in entering a state lottery for a one-bedroom apartment worth 10 million Hong Kong dollars and cash prizes totaling 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. US President Joe Biden urged government leaders to offer 100 US dollars for every newly inoculated American. Las Piñas City Congresswoman Camille Villar launched My Bahay sa Bakuna program, where she offered to raffle off a house and lot, several motorcycles, and other prizes for those who are vaccinated against COVID-19 in a move to increase inoculation in the area. For Julian Savulescu, letting money do the talking can be considered as one feasible way to boost COVID-19 vaccine uptake, especially in a climate of vaccine hesitancy. One advantage of this approach is that the use of payment will enable the individual to choose voluntarily to take it on. We know that some individuals are already unwilling to listen to accurate appraisals of the risks and benefits of vaccination because they have been influenced by anti-vaxxers. But a system of payment may provide them with an opportunity to listen and discern, although it's really up to them to judge whether vaccination is worth the payment. Moreover, incentivized vaccination efforts are not limited to monetary payment. Savulescu prefers payment in kind over actual monetary payments because it does not signal that the vaccine is unsafe, whereas payment in cash might feed unwarranted suspicion to the already hesitant public. Instead of money, compensation can be in the form of immunity passport, which grants greater freedom of movement and participation in group gatherings. People who carry a vaccination certificate or vaccination ID may be allowed to dine in public areas where they would be allowed to take off masks, as well as enjoy concerts and sporting events in large indoor arenas. There are, of course, four moral Objections against the payment for vaccination model. These are anchored on the concepts of 1. The moral status of payment, 2. Coercion, 3. Exploitation, and 4. Utility. Critics claim that payment corrupts, payment coerces, payment exploits, and payment is a costly mistake. My present goal is to provide reasons for rejecting each of these claims in order to establish that payment for vaccination is morally acceptable. Specifically, we will support the following claims. Payment for vaccination is not morally wrong per se, it is not coercive nor exploitative, and it helps bring about desirable results. First objection. Payment by its nature corrupts. Moral choices including public health decisions or private health decisions should be made for right reasons, and payment is not one of them. For Largent and Miller, people have an obligation to be vaccinated, and this obligation includes a duty to promote their own health, a duty to others to promote the community benefit of vaccination, a duty to society for individuals to do their fair share in putting a stop to the pandemic. To entice people to do morally permissible actions for the sake of money when this can be done for free does not seem right. Getting vaccinated in order to receive an incentive of $25 or even $1,000 takes away moral significance from the act. Brennan and Jaworski, however, contend that money does not introduce any new reason to make an exchange wrong. So long as the right background conditions are in place, if you can do it for free, then you can do it for any amount of money. When a Catholic priest administers sacraments and receives fees, is sanctity negated by payment? Surely not. Teachers get paid for training young minds, yet it is not made bad when payment is introduced. In the same way, if vaccination is judged to be safe enough without incentives, then it is safe enough to incentivize it with payment. This leads us to realize that in most cases, when we question the moral status of transactions, it is the nature of the exchange that is in question, not the fact that money is involved. For example, an exchange of money in the form of ransom for the kidnapped victim is wrong, primarily because abduction is morally wrong, not because it is done for monetary considerations. Second objection, payment coerces. It can be argued that a considerable monetary incentive for vaccination, such as the proposal in the US to give $1,500 as a reward, can be considered coercive. But what's really wrong with coercion? The use of coercion diminishes the target's freedom and responsibility, and as such is a wrong and a violation of right. Coercion works by introducing a threat to make a recipient worse off for doing an act. It alters an agent's actions, making the actor's prospects worse. A coerced agent had an act in view and then altered his choice of action in response to the imposition of threat. Now, is payment for vaccination coercive? If a coercive proposal makes its receiver worse off, then a baseline is needed to establish whether it makes the recipient worse off, better off, or makes no difference. As such, if there is no disruption in the status quo or baseline condition and threat is not introduced, incentivized vaccination is not a coercion. It is an offer or addition of another option. Any person can pick an offer or that offer because he feels that it would improve his life in the long run. In this case, a person can receive immunization and payment or protection and compensation. Clearly, there is no option that is either desired or good, that is removed or made very unappealing. Since payment for vaccination does not prevent the recipient from achieving a better condition, it is not coercive. Third objection, payment exploits. To exploit someone is to take unfair advantage of them. It is to use another person's vulnerability for one's benefit. Exploitation occurs when someone offers less than a fair deal and the person accepts it only because he is vulnerable due to background injustice. Critics argue that offering monetary incentives in vaccination might take advantage of people who have lost jobs, experienced homelessness, food insecurity, or slipped into poverty. While offers of payment can unfairly take advantage of poorer offerees, it is unlikely that an offer of payment will work for wealthy people. Those who offer incentives are generally in a stronger bargaining position than the recipients of offers, and they may pay the weaker recipients to make them cooperate and contribute to the production of a public good. The stronger party then uses its advantage to enjoy the gains to be had from cooperation between parties. But vaccination or payment for vaccination is not exploitative. Exploitative transactions take advantage of a person's vulnerability in order to fulfill the goals of someone else. Vaccination, whether accompanied by payment or not, is not likely to be exploitative because the individual who receives it usually gains at least as much benefit as the community. It may be true that some individuals who are financially challenged may be more inclined to take the money and accept the hazards of immunization. However, in a market economy, this is not an isolated case because it applies to all dangerous and unpleasant jobs. Even then, it is not necessarily exploitation if there are protective systems in place and scientific data point to safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines. Adding money to the transaction when certain ethical conditions have been met adds no additional level of wrongdoing, especially when transaction can provide huge benefits. Vaccination protects oneself and it can work towards optimizing population protection as a bonus. Fourth objection, payment is a costly mistake. A payment for vaccination model is consistent with the claim that we should use whatever saves lives, especially if education, encouragement, and facilitation fail. But we now have to address the important ethical question concerning utility. Do these costly payments work to increase vaccine uptake? Surely payment of $12 or $25 or even $1,500 would impose tremendous financial burden to the state. But our response is rather direct. A payment model could be less costly and it can effectively increase vaccine uptake. In the UK alone, a combined £107 billion has been spent on furlough and income support by the end of September 2021. Former US presidential candidate John Delaney proposed $1,500 to be given to every individual vaccinated in the US. The estimated cost would be approximately 383 billion US dollars. While the plan will be very costly, his plan would be worth the cost because it would save lives, provide relief to struggling Americans, and accelerate the opening of the economy. The total economic cost of the pandemic in the US as of fall 2021 is estimated to be at 16 trillion US dollars or 90% of the gross domestic product. And it makes more economic sense to pay people a large sum of money to encourage them to be vaccinated as soon as possible so that they can return to work and keep the economy growing. However, according to Pennings and Simmons, using incentives can have a negative impact on the general populace since it can lead to failure in accomplishing its goals. However, empirical data suggests otherwise. Payments were successfully used to increase HPV vaccination in England, hepatitis B in the United States and UK, and tetanus toxoid in Nigeria. And the recent study showed that monetary incentives increased vaccination rates by 4.2 percentage points, indicating that incentives can increase vaccine uptake even in rich countries with high vaccination rates. These findings support that payment for vaccination works, and if so, we have good reason to believe that using incentives will assist us in reducing COVID-19 spread and mortality. Conclusion: the responses provided to the objections against payment vaccination, if successful, provide support for ruling out moral reasons for non-acceptance of incentivization of vaccination. Specifically, it has been shown that the use of payment per se is not necessarily unethical and is neither coercive nor exploitative. Finally, data show increased uptake of COVID-19 vaccines due to incentives provide additional justification for adopting payment for vaccination. And here are the references. Thank you very much.